Hello, Bijal. Thanks for joining, and I'm so excited to start this conversation with you.
Oh, thanks so much, Dami. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you about bibliotherapy.
Yes, yes. I mean, the first time you mentioned bibliotherapy to me was so intriguing because it made sense to a lot of things that I've been thinking about books and healing, and I was just so intrigued by it, and I wanted to share this with, other people. And but from your own perspective, I want you to actually talk about bibliotherapy, what you do, who you are, how you got into doing bibliotherapy, and just the impact it's made on your life.
Yes, no, thank you for the question. No, I think lots of people have the same experience when they first um, realize there's actually a word for this feeling that we have when,
Yes.
we feel seen and heard and acknowledged by literature
Yeah.
that's really speaking to us or that's really speaking to our own stories when we're connecting with the author or the character. So when I was in my own counseling, so I did a counseling diploma whilst I was working in investment banking, and that's when I sort of um, realized that there's actually something called bibliotherapy because I ended up using it a lot in my own training and in my own counseling sessions. Um, and I'd bring lots of books to my therapist, and at the time I didn't do much with it because I kind of went back into banking and but when the time was right, when I was pregnant with my second one, Roshan, I sort of launched the practice, the bibliotherapy practice, which was the use of literature as a therapeutic tool in a counseling setting. But I also began with what I call personalized book prescriptions. So they curated reading lists um, based on like a set of questions that I asked my clients, and then I'll curate something for them. These are normally for therapeutic issues, but I do a lot of personal interest stuff as well. So that was kind of like how it all began. And 5 years in, I then had I guess enough material and research for a book, and enough sort of evidence-based work to share as well with readers because I did a whole because of my client case studies and client practice, and I really wanted to share that with the world. So I published Bibliotherapy, The Healing Power of Reading. That was with Hachette's imprint, Little Brown Book Group, and their lifestyle imprint, Piacus. And so that hardback came out in February 22nd, 2024. And then the paperback was out last September. But there's also been about 12 translations of the book now. So it's sort of really been, a movement behind it, and it's catching on in different parts of the world. And I've also trained many mental health professionals as well as librarians and booksellers with their reading advisory on bibliotherapy. I have several online courses that people sort of do and sort of
Awesome.
incorporate in their own practice. So it's been a fascinating journey. I've loved every minute of it, and obviously daunting sometimes because it's your own business and the challenges that come with that.
Exactly.
But it's also been a real journey, and I've discovered so much along the way.
Yes. I mean, it's so fascinating, I mean, we're being taught like, oh, read, to improve your knowledge, but just the idea of reading as a way of healing.
Yes,
I
yeah,
want you to talk a lot more around that because that is just fascinating. I mean, we read books. We go to the library, we're drawn to certain books, they call us, and we're like, oh wow, this book is speaking. But just that concept around the healing, can you talk a bit
yeah.
more about that?
Yes, no, exactly. It's interesting that you started with that because actually in the forward of my book I talk about, we use reading for education,
Oh
for
wow, okay.
entertainment, for escapism, but
Yes,
it's
yes,
never
yes.
considered the case for healing, sort of reading's role in that. And so the first section of my book is actually on the whole history of therapeutic reading, um, starting from these ancient Greeks and ancient Egyptians to like Michel de Montaigne, Montaigne, and also Wordsworth and Who else? Wordsworth, Shakespeare, George Eliot, and who inspired a lot of Freud's writing and Freud theories.
Yes.
And Freud was obviously inspired by the Greek mythology as well. So there's a whole history behind therapeutic reading, and I feel like that wasn't really shared even during the World Wars. Doctors were also poets; they wrote poetry for their patients. And in the early 1920s, there was also this concept of social prescription, even yeah. And there've been lots of research. There's been a lot of research around reading and its role in therapy and yeah, just therapeutic reading.
Yeah.
But it was never really translated into mainstream
Yeah.
culture. And
Mm.
I guess as somebody really interested in from a counseling perspective, but also from a research perspective, I really wanted to bring in the whole story,
Yes.
which is what the first section of the book focuses on. And then I wanted to then show the application through stories of my clients, from women to mothers to children, even couples, how we've used it in the setting. And I take a few examples from my own practice at home.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the last section was the curated reading section, which is all about actually how do you go about curating a reading list for yourself, a personal one for therapeutic or personal interest purposes. And that was probably one of my favorite chapters, because it share my own methods and yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's so
lots of
exciting.
reading lists at the
Yeah.
back,
Yeah.
in
Oh,
each
really? In the
of
book?
mental health themes. Yeah,
Oh,
so
nice.
for like across fiction and non-fiction and poetry, from like confidence or empowerment or like even menopause or grief. So that was a little list at the end. So there's tons of book recommendations in the book, but it was really there as a guide and something that people can just open up whenever they're having a difficult day and just find something that will hopefully resonate with them. And
Yeah.
there's enough of a range.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that because I remember going into therapy and me and my therapist would always talk about books.
Did
So
you?
at the end of the session, she would recommend like certain books. I think also because she knew I love to read. So
Yes.
she would just be like, oh, you should check out this book. And I'll be like, oh, and then it's something like we'll discuss on our, next session. And in fact, like I would find my answers in the book
Yeah.
sometimes, and
Yeah.
I reflect and journal, around it.
Oh my
So,
God, yeah, that's
yes,
exactly
yes,
it. I do a lot
yes,
of literary journaling. I get people to do that. So
yes, exactly. So
it's so
to
nice
hear
to
that there's a term called bibliotherapy, I felt like, wow, that's what it's called. And more people need to, know about this and what it means, and also know that they can find a form of therapy through reading books.
yeah.
That's the message I really want to pass across from our discussion today.
Yeah,
And
and it's across fiction
yes,
and non-fiction. So it's not always self-help, which is what people might think. In
yeah.
fact, fiction is sometimes more powerful in this, in sort of bringing about healing. Yeah.
Exactly. And you spoke about working as an accountant, or was it investment?
Yeah, as an
Yes,
investment banker.
yes.
Yeah.
What was that transition, shifting? I know, why did you make that transition? And and it's also for, I know a lot of parents, that would love to just start something, just so they have more flexibility in life and
Yes.
and
Yeah.
all of that. So I guess tell us your journey, your story, how you transition, how you're able to transition, because not a lot of people can do that. Yes, just talk a lot about, your career and where you are today.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Dami. Yeah, no, look, it was so I fell into banking and accountancy because I'd done a maths degree at Warwick, and I loved maths and I loved numbers. So there was this natural sort of extension to thinking, well, I'll be, it'll be fun. It'll be fine. I love numbers. But once I got there, the reality is obviously very different to the fantasy. And I began to sort of understand the world and the different sorts of people that exist in banking. And I think banking is a profession that attracts a certain type of person as well, like the super alpha, the super sort of very competitive,
Hmm.
You need that sort of bit of fiery streak. And it was interesting to work with people like that as well, which was probably very different to the sort of person I am. I'm very interested in people, and they may not be as, they're more interested in their deals and their numbers and the financial profit, which is great, but it just wasn't for me. And I was sort of beginning to understand much how fascinated I was by the way people work and the way their minds work and the psychology aspects of it all. And so I ended up doing a part-time diploma in counseling skills and counseling, psychodynamic counseling. And during that time, I realized, obviously, that I think most people find literature as medicine, literature as a tool for healing, but I realized that there's a whole methodology behind it and how you can work with literature and leverage literature. So I wanted to bring that to the world. I wasn't ready to leave just then, after I'd finished, but I kind of then sort of had a plan to set up something a bit later down the line.
Hmm.
And when, I had my second child, it made sense because, as you said, lots of
It's
parents,
always the second child.
yeah, always the second child, because I think you can manage at the first child, but it was also, I knew I always wanted to do it. And then it was the timing. And then it was the fact that I wouldn't, investment banking, you had to be there from 8 to 6 with no flexibility at working from home. This was pre-COVID. So it was tough. It was a tough choice to make. And then obviously my husband Amit was moving to San Francisco, and that, he had a job offer out there. So it kind of made sense to transition out at that point, and set something up. And I used a lot of the practices that I suggest. I use them myself, like poetry writing and poetry therapy. And I use a lot of it when I moved to San Francisco, and I was pregnant with my second one. And I think it was an exhilarating journey because there was so much that I hadn't thought about in that move. Just in the sort of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to move across the world, I'm going to set up this business, I'm going to live this life. And obviously the fantasy is always very different to the reality. But it was great. I learned so much. And the first 18 months of any business, I think, you're just not sure if this is going to work or not. And so you're sitting with uncertainty the whole time. And but because I was at home with the kids, and I had some time to sort of test a few things out, so that was helpful. And so the book prescriptions kind of kicked off, and they really took over in COVID. I think everyone was reading, and everyone was online, so that
Yeah,
really
it was also a very interesting time as well.
yeah, it's a very interesting time. And in fact, it was, I don't know, I mean, I must credit COVID for a lot of the growth behind the business, because, the business may not have taken off in the way that it did. So yeah, and then look, 7 years on, it's like continuing to build, continuing to explore new themes, also trying to keep up with the way media is moving and artificial intelligence is moving, because podcasts, I mean, we're doing this now, are another way that people are seeking information. So that is obviously something I'm adopting a lot into my strategy, so that I can get more information out to people,
Yeah.
online courses, but also just that hardcore one-to-one counseling session with literature. Also that,
Mhm.
those techniques that I talk about, various bibliotherapy techniques in my book, from letter writing to journaling to reflective practice.
Also important as well. Like I can't
Yeah,
emphasize on journaling. It's such a
yeah,
difficult thing. It's as easy as it sounds, it's so difficult for you to actually sit down with your thoughts and write them out. But it has
yeah,
to be done. That's the
yes.
way to get things through. And in the time when you were transitioning, or, are there any books you could recommend for any mom out there that, because at the end of the day, I think a lot of parents want flexibility in life, but they still want to earn money.
Yes, yeah, I
It's
mean,
like that that's different, and
yes.
is it actually going to work out? Do you have like any books you can recommend, for anyone that's thinking this way and want to maybe transition into a new career but are still sitting on the fence?
Yes, yeah. Look, I would. So in my, it's funny because in my book, I have a client story about a mum who wants to go into interior designing and is struggling to find the agency to do it. So I have a whole case study in there and all the techniques that I suggest. But some of the books that I did suggest in that was a book by Rachel Cusk called A Life's Work, where she's reflecting on, raising children, but also the challenges of trying to balance that with wanting this separate identity of a career and a vision for yourself in a professional capacity. So
Rachel
that
Cusk.
was, yeah, Life's Work by Rachel Cusk. And there's also this amazing memoir by this Egyptian writer and also technologist who started an AI company around bringing emotional aspects to voice. So being able to capture voice in AI and robotics and stuff, she's phenomenal. And her book is called Rana Al-Kaloubi's Girl Decoded. And it's about this mum who is so adamant about starting her own startup. But obviously she's brought up in Egypt in a very traditional sort of family setting where the husband's expected to kind of be the main breadwinner, and she really wants to pursue this passion project. So she like is determined to finish her PhD at Cambridge in the UK while she's having a baby, and she's got this little like toddler with her, and she finishes a PhD and then she moves to Boston and she has a second child, and eventually she ends up separating from her husband, which is a little bit sad. But she's so self-driven, and I'm not saying anybody needs to do this, but I'm just saying it's a very powerful novel in memoir, sorry, in getting you to sort of work out what your vision is and what you'd really like to pursue, and being encouraged to do it and not being held back by the fear. So I loved her. I loved that story. It was so powerful, especially to see somebody from a very traditional environment also doing that within
Yeah.
an Asian Eastern culture, which I thought was fascinating. So I'd really
Yeah.
suggest that one as well. I find memoirs are um, very good at connecting with the reader because they're very character driven, and they're so emotional, and I think they have all the sort of nuts and bolts of being able to connect with the reader and sort of
Yes.
speak the
Yeah.
reader's story. So that one,
And
yeah,
it's so interesting as you're speaking. I could already like, it sounds like a bunch of other people I know. I was like, a lot of us that grew up in traditional homes and how, and
yeah,
then, you just, trying to move through life
yes,
independently and just that self-trust of your
yes,
decisions and is it right, is it not right, what's right,
yes,
what's not right, and
yeah,
I'm definitely going to add that to my reading list. I need to read that book for sure.
yeah.
I
I
think
think
that
you'd love
was,
it.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
I
you'd
think
love
that was,
it,
I think
especially
a lot of
knowing
people
who
listening
you
would
are.
love it.
Yeah,
So I'm really excited about that one. I'm gonna, and the first book as well, we're gonna put that in the show notes, for anyone that wants to read that. And you know, I'm really really enjoying this conversation and learning around what you do, bibliotherapy, the books we can read that really open up our minds. I think for me, I read a lot of books. That's my way of escaping. And
yeah,
just imagining and dreaming. Books have always been a way for me to escape, imagine, dream. I'm always in the
yeah,
library. As a kid, I would always, my hideout was a library. I would just go there.
yes,
And the
yeah,
library was always so
yeah,
nice. I don't know why. It was always so nice, so comfortable. And, always has lovely looking books around. And I really want to encourage a lot of reading as well,
yes,
because to my community, to my children, I'm getting them to read more because I just feel like there's so much they can learn from books and they can
yes.
never learn from me. So,
No, exactly. I agree. It's really leveraging other people's life experiences as well, right?
yeah.
Beyond ours. So there's a whole range of experiences in their toolkit that they can then
Yeah, or
to.
perspective, not
Yeah.
everything you really need to agree on, but at least you can
Yes.
see like a different way of thinking and perspective and
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Exposure mindsets. Yeah,
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Um,
This
No,
was a lovely conversation. I'm
it
bringing
was
it
so
to
lovely to chat, Dami. Thank you so
bringing
much
it
for
to a
having
close.
me. I'm so excited
No worries.
to
And
to be here.
yes, and where can people find you? Where can they listen to you? Where can they see everything that Vigil's working on?
Yeah, sure. No, so obviously I've got my website, bookTherapy.io, but which has all the products and services. But I post a lot of content on social media, so Instagram, LinkedIn. Instagram handle is booktherapy_by_vigil, and a similar page on Facebook, and I'm also on LinkedIn, YouTube. So those are and TikTok. Those are probably my main ones. I do have a Substack as well.
Oh, there's so many social media channels.
Yeah,
I
I do
can't
have
even keep up.
because I do like to sort of formulate thoughts and put them all onto paper. I mean, all onto Substack and share them. And of course, I have 3 podcasts. One's an ongoing podcast, which is Bibliotherapy with Bijal Shah, where I often share just voice notes from me on bibliotherapy, but I also interview authors. And then I have 2 very limited series podcasts, one on raising a reader and storyteller, and one on play therapy and bibliotherapy, which the last episode just finished today, actually, and was published. But it's really just to help parents on on their child's reading journey, and help support their child. So yeah, so that's kind of like the sort of media side of everything. But I do speak at festivals, and I do events and workshops, and yeah, so anywhere where people are interested in learning bibliotherapy, because there is actually a whole structure and methodology and training around it.
Yes, yes. I mean,
Yeah.
I got the opportunity to hear you speak in Portugal at the
Yes,
Youth Festival, so that was amazing to see you in action, and you were fantastic
it was so
on the
nice to have you
day. So
there,
it was so
Naomi.
good to be there and just see you in your element.
Oh, thank
Yes,
you.
so yeah, well, this is the end of the podcast, and
No, thanks,
I
Dami.
can,
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, well, definitely we hope to do this again soon.
yes, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
All right,
All
bye.
right. Bye, Dami.